This state of appearance of a bike is usually the sign of an incredible adventure, or at the very least, a really, really good story. I mean, how can a bike as pristine as the Prestige go from looking like this to looking like that? There's a story somewhere on there, and today we're going to unpack that story. This past Saturday, I had the time of my life on the bike. Back in July, I mapped out a path on Strava that was going to be part gravel, part road. But back in July and August, it was simply too hot for me to do that kind of stuff. For those of you who are not familiar with South Florida, most of our gravel, because South Florida is topographically challenged, is based on the levee system. The levee system is what separates the swamp Everglades area from the rest of civilization. It's kind of like a mounted berm. And on top of it, we have crushed limestone, which is about 1.5 car lengths width. And it is our gravel nirvana down here in South Florida. It's like a gravel highway super system. Now, to the uninitiated, it may seem like, man, miles and miles of endless nothingness, no elevation change, nothing but the same thing. But for me, the natural beauty, the serenity, the opportunity to see all kinds of wildlife, okay, really, mostly different species of birds, but it's still very exciting to me. So my friend and I, Chris, decided that we were going to get out there and do it now that the weather has began to cool a little bit. We left at 6 a.m., which it was still dark, and we rode into dawn, into the midday, into the scorching heat of South Florida. And yes, we got our bikes filthy. Now, doing this kind of adventure takes a little bit of preparation. When you're out there in the Everglades, you're actually literally in the middle of nowhere. And if you get a flat or a major mechanical, you could really be done for. So one of the things that I did was, in preparation for this, I made sure that I was going to be flat proof. And if I did get a flat, I made sure that I had a contingency plan to deal with that was going to be bulletproof. Also worked on making sure that my nutrition was on point both before the ride and during the ride. Once we got into civilization, after about 35 miles of graveling, we had a lot of options in terms of eateries. But man, I can honestly say that this has been one of the best days. Yeah, this has been one of the best days on the bike for me ever. So every great adventure has to have an amazing and faithful steed that's up to the duty. And this is mine. It's my Colnago Prestige. Now, I'm of the belief that any road bike is potentially a gravel bike. It's just a matter of what you do in terms of your tires and tire pressure. This is Colnago Prestige, which is officially a cyclocross bike, and as such, it has a very race-oriented fit and feel, but I've managed to tame it a little bit, starting with one of my touch points, which is my saddle. I recently swapped out from the Cell Italia Nuvas to this Cell Italia SLR Kit Carbonio, which gives a lot more compliance in the saddle area. And I also had a generic carbon seat post, which I swapped out to the Dacia Superleggera. And both of those things not only made the build lighter, they also helped to smooth out the ride.
Why is it like 15 degrees cooler over here?
I don't know, but I like it.
I like it. What the heck happened?
And so our adventure began. One of the things that we wanted to do was just to make sure that we could get through this ride without having to call for help or be laid out on the side of the road. So we decided that we were going to pace the ride very conservatively. Not really knowing how long it was going to take, we estimated that it would probably take us between 6 and 7 hours to complete this ride, which means that we'd be finishing somewhere between 12 and 1 p.m., at which point in South Florida it gets very hot. For me, that meant that I was going to maintain a zone 2 effort for the first portion of the ride, and that's 139 beats per minute. So I would occasionally look down at my computer just to make sure that I was maintaining the plan. It was also very encouraging for us to occasionally come across either individual cyclists or small groups who are out here doing their gravel adventure as well. It was amazing for us to start riding while it was still dark, ride into dawn, and then ride into the early morning, and just being able to enjoy the natural beauty of the Everglades. what, almost, we're 18 miles in, and we're looking legit, like some legit adventurers.
My butt hurt.
I told you, we out here on non-gravel bikes. How you feel so far?
Oh, good. Just my butt hurts. Every mile on gravel is like 5 on the road. So I was looking down when I was pulling, and we're only going 14 miles an hour, and I was doing 200 watts.
Oh,
Man, this
really?
is rough.
After a very brief stop at mile marker 18 just to collect ourselves, we got back on the road. One of the neat surprises for us was how much smoother and nicer the gravel was north of Loxahatchee Boat Camp. I mean, it was beautiful. The scenery was a little bit different, perhaps a little bit cleaner, a little bit more kind of Evergladesy. But also what was happening is that the sun was coming up and just revealing a spectacular day as we made it into the end of our gravel portion.
I think I'm gonna try to reset this brake. My wheel's not. Maybe that's part of the problem. It's not like spinning freely.
Daggone.
So that might be the extra. Yeah, he's putting 200
Why am I
watts.
working so hard? The other thing that I recently did was I swapped my tires out. Now, I was running the Challenge Chicane, and I recently swapped out to the Vittoria Terreno Dry. The previous tire was a 32 millimeter. These are 33 millimeter. Previous tire, in order for me to have a lot of compliance, I had to run those at about 50 or 55 PSI. I'm able to run these at 60 to 65. What that means is that if I'm going back and forth from riding on the gravel to riding on the road to getting back to riding on the gravel, I really have a little bit less that I need to worry about in terms of dragginess or low tire pressure once I get to the road section. So back on the road. Now, after a brief equipment check, we found out that both of Chris's disc brakes were rubbing. Go figure. And that explains why he was putting out 200 watts instead of the about 110 or 120 that I was putting out on that portion of the ride. So we started hitting a little bit of headwind and cross headwind on this section, where what we decided to do was just to do 30-second pulls just to keep things nice and clean and to make sure again that we were not burying ourselves. Remember, our focus is on being very conservative during this ride.
Oh yeah. How about that?
How about that? I'm hungry. So part of our path to get back home is to ride south on A1A. And it is inevitable. If you get anywhere on A1A, anywhere near Fort Lauderdale, between West Palm, let's just say, and Fort Lauderdale, you're going to come across cyclists galore. So it's always a train or somebody that you can jump on. And we were actually invited to jump on this train. And while we had a tailwind and it's not like we really needed it, it broke up a little bit of the monotony of just Chris and I riding along by ourselves. So we stayed with them until we got to the area where we were going to stop for lunch. Sunshine, you are my sunshine, let it be. So we stopped at a place called Anything Bagels in Delray Beach. The food was delicious, had a great breakfast, and we got back on our way. From there, it was a typical ride back down A1A, down through Fort Lauderdale, riding across our urban sprawl just to get back home, and culminating in us riding along the Greenway, making our way back into Markham Park, where we left. All in all, it was a great day on the bike, 90 glorious miles, and as adventures go, this one was delicious. The epic is done.
Hey, we made it.
Chris, we did it. It wasn't 100 miles, it's 90 miles.
It's the same. 90, 100.
Actually, because of the portion we did with the gravel, it's actually like we rode 130 miles.
Yeah, 100, like actually 200. It's like
It's a 200 mile. Legs felt a little bit rubbery at the end, but Chris got his second win and blew it out.
That's right, man. Hey,
So-
endurance training.
Yes,
Let's go.
that's right. 90 miles in a bank of 200 miles in a bank of fitness.
Yeah.